Hi, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be about living with anxiety while pregnant. I know probably a lot of women experience anxiety and then have to get pregnant, and then what do you do? Oh my gosh, especially if you're taking medication or if you haven't taken medication, I guess. Oh, this is my experience. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a mental health professional. This is just what I've gone through and kind of what has worked for me, and maybe it might work for you. And if you are struggling, you should definitely get help, especially if you have access to those resources. Take advantage of it. If you live anywhere, but if you live in California, there are great mental health professionals in this state, and my practice accepts a wide variety of insurance plans, so there's something for you. And I actually do teletherapy, so it makes it very easy for me to do an appointment, and it gives me no excuses to not see a therapist because I can literally take an appointment on my phone. Yeah, if you're curious or interested in what life is like living with anxiety, then just keep watching. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD about a year ago, and I kind of realized that I needed professional help. Actually, I've always been a huge proponent of mental health, seeking help if you need it, get access to therapy, changing the stigma around it, and I was kind of saying all those things, but I wasn't practicing what I was preaching, which definitely made me feel inauthentic, like a hypocrite, but also I just wasn't healthy. And so one of my friends was telling me that she was doing teletherapy, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe I'll start with that, and it'll kind of segue into going into an office. So I took the plunge a year ago, and I looked up the same practice that she went to, and I did an intake, and they did this like question. They gave me a questionnaire and asked me why basically I'd been seeking therapy and what some of my symptoms were and all of that. And so it really forced me to think, because for the last, I want to say 2 years is when I really noticed my symptoms becoming debilitating. So I was having panic attacks every other day, and what that feels like is death. And I mean that very literally. If death had a feeling, if I knew what it felt like to die, that's what having a panic attack would feel. Some of the physical symptoms, my chest would get really tight, I would feel like I can't breathe, I would start getting tunnel vision, I would get dizzy, and then I just had this thought in my mind that I was just gonna die. And it sounds very hyperbolic, but that's truly in your mind. You just think you're not gonna make it. I've had a few where I'm literally curled up in the ball on the floor, can't speak, can't do anything, just can't move. It's very paralyzing. So when I got to that point, I was like, all right, I definitely can't live my life like that, and I don't want to. That was kind of the epitome of okay, you need to figure this out. I had other symptoms of anxiousness constantly. What that feels like, what generalized anxiety feels like, is I try to describe it to people as if you're going to take a test, like a really important test that you can't fail. That feeling that you get of oh my gosh, I can't fail this test. What happens if I fail this test? My whole life is going to be over. That's what it feels like. And it feels like that about everything, regardless of if everything is going right in my life. And that means I have a job, I have a roof over my head, I can feed myself, I make decent money, I have a supportive partner, I have all these things, I'm able-bodied, and despite all of that, there's just always something else to worry about. What if my house burns down? What if my car blows up? And it could be that catastrophic, or it could be something really small, was that person looking at me? Oh my gosh, what were they thinking? They think I'm weird, or they think I'm crazy, or I don't know. Anything, any little thing or big thing, and just anything in general feels like all of my thoughts are on a racetrack in a car driving around the track at 200 miles an hour. just constantly, all the time. And it was affecting my sleep, it was affecting my mood. I basically wasn't able to sleep for years very consistently or very well. And so that translated into being very tired, my cognitive capacity very low, probably my work suffered. I mean, I have been able to go to work, and so I'm pretty high functioning, but it's very exhausting trying to function at that level, feeling like your whole world is coming crashing down around you. So, all that being said, I started the process to go to therapy. And so when I did that initial appointment, not an interview, where they asked me all those questions, she recommended that I see a psychiatrist and see a therapist as well. And they said, okay, great, you know best, so I'm going to just take your advice and just go ahead, schedule me with whoever you think, because I, at the time, didn't really know much about therapy methodologies or models of therapy or different kinds of therapists, or really what the true difference between a psychiatrist and a therapist is. And so throughout this process, I've learned that. So a psychiatrist prescribes you medication. They are a doctor, like a licensed medical doctor. A therapist is a mental health professional. So they're like a counselor. And they do have advanced degrees, and they're very capable people. They just don't prescribe you medication. So I had my initial appointment with a psychiatrist. He asked me sort of the same thing, and I went through the whole spiel of what I thought was going on, and he said, all right, well, it sounds like you have generalized anxiety disorder. And I said, yeah, probably. And in that first appointment, he said, okay, well, here are the treatment options that I can offer you. And he said there is medication, and that's an option, and but ultimately it's up to you whether you decide to take it or not. And I encourage you to go do your own research and then come back. We'll regroup in a week, and then you can let me know what you think. And I was like, okay, great. And as someone who appreciates doing research and trying to stay as informed as I possibly can, I went into the research. So he told me that commonly SSRIs, which are also described for depression, can be used for anxiety as well, which is something I actually didn't know. So SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is a mouthful. And I don't know the science behind it. I mean, I've read it, but I could not articulate it to you. I understand kind of how it works. Basically, it leaves more serotonin kind of floating around in your free, available to use. And serotonin is something that makes you feel good. It's a mood neurotransmitter. So I did the research, and I said, okay, well, it can't hurt, and if I don't like it or if I don't want to take it, then I just stop. Or he told me, we can just take you off of it. So at this point, I was ready to try anything, and I came back the next week, and I told him, sure, why not? Let's try it. And so he said, okay, great, we're going to start you on the lowest possible dose of generic Lexapro. I don't know what the generic name is off the top of my head, but I started at 5 milligrams, and then he said, okay, how it typically works is your body adjusts, it gets used to it, it'll take about a month, and then after that we revisit, and then we see if we need to up your dose or you stay at the same, and it'll kind of work like that, and we discuss if you're having any negative side effects or if you're not seeing changes, etc. So I started taking Lexapro. I don't even remember what the side effects were like in the beginning. He said that some people experience nausea and some people experience more tiredness. Honestly, I was already so tired. I figured that I couldn't get any more tired than I already was. I didn't actually experience any nausea with the medication. So after the next month, I said, okay, this has been good. So I haven't experienced any negative side effects, but I haven't experienced anything helpful. I'm still extremely irritable. My mind is still racing. I still feel like on a scale of 10, my anxiety is still at a 10. And so he said, okay, we'll gradually increase your dose. And that's how it's been going with my psychiatrist. That's kind of pretty much all we talk about is the physiological aspects of anxiety. Now for therapy, with my therapist, I ended up getting matched with a therapist who practices like a relationship-based therapy, and that's basically just like talking. I think I started in March of last year, so it hasn't been a year yet. It's been like 9 months. Generally liked my therapist. I talked a lot about things that happened to me in my childhood, and I already figured that it affected me the way it has, and I know a lot of the things that I experienced in my childhood contribute to my anxiety now. I don't know if that's what I was looking for at the time, but it helped to talk about it. It definitely helped to talk about the childhood trauma. And for a lot of people who don't talk about childhood trauma, that can be very cathartic. I still would recommend anyone going to talk therapy, at least in the beginning. So now that it's been 9 months later, I am much better. I would say that my general anxiety levels are down to about a 5 out of 10. So what that means is I'm not having panic attacks anymore at all. I haven't had an anxiety attack in, gosh, I can't even remember the last time I had an anxiety attack. Oh, I was prescribed Ativan for panic and anxiety attacks because those are pretty debilitating. As I was describing earlier, there were times where I couldn't even move. And so what that does, Ativan is a benzodiazepine, so it just kind of calms you down in layman's terms. And that's not something that I was prescribed to take every day, and I don't want to because there's a risk of dependence. And so I didn't need to take it every day, and I actually was scared to kind of in the beginning because I didn't want to feel like I was dependent on it. But it's fast acting, you know, it's not like the Lexapro. So I was prescribed that. I took it a few times, definitely early on. If you're pregnant, you cannot take it. It will cause birth defects. So if you find out that you're pregnant, talk to your doctor immediately. And that's what I did too. And I wasn't taking it in that like couple months time frame, so I hadn't taken it at all. So that was good. But yeah, you can't take that on if you're pregnant. So now I'm a lot better. I haven't even been taking the Ativan. I still continue to take my Lexapro. I'll talk about that in a second, even though I am pregnant. And I continue to go to therapy weekly, and it has helped a lot. I've maintained my equilibrium for now. I exercise, haven't been exercising lately because of the pregnancy. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But exercise helps, therapy helps, medication helps, a routine helps, and just being patient with yourself, to be honest, and giving yourself a little bit of grace, because even if you are living with anxiety, you're still human, and you know, things happen. You'll fall down and you get back up. I'm lucky that I have very supportive partners. I have a very good support system in him, and I also have supportive friends, and so that's really important to have at least a few people that you feel like you can lean on, you feel like you can talk to, you feel like you can confide in, going through living your life with anxiety, because it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard. I've gotten to a point now where I wouldn't say it's easier, but I'm definitely not sick anymore. That's a good place to be. The other part of it is having anxiety and being pregnant, because pregnancy is very exciting and it's a very beautiful thing and it's a very wonderful thing, but it's also a very anxiety-inducing thing, even if you don't have anxiety already. So I feel fortunate that I got pregnant, found out I was pregnant at the time that I did, at a time where I was a little bit more stable and had my anxiety managed better, because it's allowed me to go through at least the first trimester and starting the second trimester not as anxious as I could be, because that'll ultimately will affect the baby. And so it's really, really important to continue taking care of your mental health while you're pregnant. I chose to stay on my Lexapro. I talked about it with my psychiatrist. Basically, this is what he told me, that women on average have a chance, 3 to 5% chance of having a baby with birth defects anyway. That's regardless of if you are on medications or anything. So there's that baseline that you could have a baby with birth defects. And I'm like, okay, that's scary, even though 3% is so low. But taking the Lexapro doesn't increase that risk. So he told me to weigh the benefit and the risks and think about it, and my personal choice, and would it be better to maintain my mental health because it's been helping me and I've been living a very healthy life and I'm more well adjusted, or if I want to taper off, then I can. I decided to stay on it. As I mentioned, I did all of that research. The one thing that I'm going to do is taper off in my 3rd trimester before birth, because he mentioned having serotonin withdrawals. I don't remember what the term he used was, but when my baby is born, having a withdrawal from that extra serotonin because it's an SSRI, so they have more serotonin floating around. It's available for them to use. So I said, yes, I will do that. I'll continue taking it until my 3rd trimester, and I'll start tapering off in my 3rd trimester because it takes a month for it to leave your system. And then with breastfeeding, he said, if you do decide to breastfeed, let's talk about that because it's in breast milk. It can be in breast milk. So I'm trying to prepare myself for that point because I honestly don't know how I will be off of medication. I mean, I just going back to feeling so tired and my mind just racing all the time and constantly second guessing everything and feeling like the world is going to end. That gives me a little bit of anxiety thinking about it. But I survived my life as long as I did, almost 30 years, 28 years without it, so I could do it again. I'm just, I've been thinking about this a lot since I found out I was pregnant and what's going to be the best for me so that I'm healthy so I can take care of my baby. Now I'm trying to do all the right things. So that's kind of my experience, and what I want to say is that if you are struggling with anxiety or depression or PTSD or anything else, please get help. And if you feel like you can't talk to anybody, I always have an ear, and I'm here to listen and give support and advice as much as I can and encourage you to go to the doctor. So that's my story and that's my bit, and I hope that it helped someone and it inspired you to take your mental health into your hands in this new year, 2020. And, just live a better, healthier life. Your health isn't just physical, it's mental too. So, if you'd like more content like that, like what life is like living like this, just let me know, and I'm happy to do more videos about that. It's something I'm very passionate about, actually. If you stayed this long, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.